Parliament just descended into chaos. Voices were raised. Tempers snapped, and in a moment that stunned the chamber, Nigel Farage launched a brutal attack that left Keir Starmer reeling, while Labour MPs stormed out in full view of the nation. This wasn't debate. This was a public collapse, and the fallout is only beginning. 1 minute ago, the atmosphere inside Parliament changed completely. What began as a routine session exploded into one of the most dramatic confrontations Britain has seen in years. Nigel Farage took the floor, calm at first, measured, and then dismantled Keir Starmer line by line, not with shouting, not with insults, but with precision, and the impact was devastating. Witnesses inside the chamber describe a moment of stunned silence as Farage delivered his opening remarks. He didn't rush, he didn't interrupt, he waited. And when he spoke, he went straight for Starmer's weakest point: credibility. The accusation was simple but lethal, that Starmer no longer speaks with authority, either to the country or to his own party. That was the spark. Starmer's body language reportedly shifted almost immediately. Rigid, defensive. The calm leadership image he worked so hard to maintain cracked under the pressure. As Farage continued, the tone sharpened. He accused the Prime Minister of losing control, of hiding behind procedure, and of failing to answer the public's most basic concerns. And then it escalated. Farage pointed directly to the Labour benches and questioned whether Starmer still had their confidence. That single moment triggered visible unrest. Murmurs turned into shouts. MPs began reacting emotionally, and suddenly the situation spiralled beyond control. Labour MPs started leaving their seats, not quietly, not one by one, but in a clear collective walkout that stunned everyone watching. Cameras caught it. The public saw it, and the message was impossible to ignore. This was not unity, this was rupture. Starmer remained seated, stone-faced, as members of his own party stormed out of the chamber. That image alone may define this entire episode. A Prime Minister under attack, quite not just from his opponent, but abandoned in real time by those meant to stand behind him. Farage, sensing the moment, didn't slow down. He pressed harder. He framed the walkout as proof of his argument that Starmer's leadership is no longer respected, no longer feared, and no longer trusted. He accused Labour of chaos, confusion, and internal decay. And with each sentence, the pressure intensified. This wasn't just a political attack, it was a psychological one. The power of Farage's moment came from contrast. While the Labour benches emptied, he stood firm. While voices rose in protest, he stayed controlled. That contrast made the scene even more damaging for Starmer. Leadership is about presence under pressure. And right now, that presence is being questioned openly. The walkout has already sparked outrage. Critics are calling it disgraceful. Supporters are calling it emotional protest. But one thing is undeniable. It looked like loss of control. And in politics, optics matter as much as facts. Behind the scenes, aides are reportedly scrambling. Emergency meetings, crisis calls, damage control strategies being drafted on the fly, because moments like this don't fade, they replay over and over across every platform, across every headline. What makes this especially dangerous is timing. Starmer is already under immense pressure, leadership doubts, internal tension, public frustration, and now a televised parliamentary breakdown that hands his opponents a powerful narrative that Labour cannot even hold itself together, let alone lead the country. Farage knows exactly what he has done. He didn't just attack Starmer, he exposed division, he forced emotion into the open, and he did it in the one place where weakness is most visible, the floor of Parliament. This was not accidental, it was calculated, and the consequences are only just beginning to unfold. Because when MPs walk out on their own leader, the question is no longer about policy or debate. The question becomes far more brutal. Who is really in charge now, and does Keir Starmer still have the authority to answer that question? As the chamber struggled to regain order, the damage was already done. A parliamentary walkout is not just a protest, it is a signal. And the signal sent today was loud, messy and impossible to spin away. For Keir Starmer, this was the nightmare scenario, a public display of division at the exact moment he needed discipline. Inside Westminster, the reaction was immediate. MPs from all sides understood what they had just witnessed. This was not a routine disagreement. This was a breakdown in authority unfolding live. The kind of moment that hardens narratives and reshapes power overnight. Farage understood that too. After the walkout, he shifted tone. Well, not louder, but sharper. He framed the exit of Labour MPs as evidence that his criticism had struck a nerve. He suggested they weren't leaving out of outrage, but out of discomfort. Discomfort with truths they didn't want spoken aloud. That framing landed hard because the visuals backed it up. Starmer, meanwhile, was left in an impossible position. If he condemned the walkout, he risked alienating his own MPs further. If he defended it, he looked weak. Unable to keep his party together during a direct challenge, silence too carried danger. Every option made him appear reactive rather than commanding. This is the trap of leadership under pressure. Behind the scenes, Labour officials are said to be furious, not just at Farage, but at their own MPs. Walkouts may feel righteous in the moment, but they hand control of the narrative to opponents. And right now, narrative control is everything. Public reaction has been swift and divided. Supporters of Starmer argue the MPs were standing up against provocation, refusing to legitimise what they see as political theatre. Critics argue the opposite, that walking out looks like surrender, an admission that the argument couldn't be answered. For undecided voters, the optics are simple: chaos. And chaos erodes confidence. Media coverage has intensified the damage. Commentators are replaying the footage again and again, slowing it down, analysing expressions, counting how many MPs left and who stayed behind. These details matter more than speeches ever do. They create lasting impressions, and those impressions are rarely kind to leaders under fire. Within Labour, quiet anger is building. Some MPs believe the walkout made the situation worse. Others feel it was unavoidable. That internal disagreement is dangerous because it suggests there is no shared strategy, only emotion. Parties survive pressure through coordination, not instinct. Farage, on the other hand, appears energised. This moment fits perfectly into his long-standing narrative that the political establishment cannot handle direct confrontation and that when challenged, it collapses into disorder. Whether fair or not, today's events feed that story powerfully. And once a story like that takes hold, it spreads fast. Starmer's allies are now trying to regain control by shifting focus back to policy, procedure and context. But the problem is timing. You don't win back authority by explaining process after a public breakdown. Authority is felt, not argued. The walkout has also triggered uncomfortable questions. Who organised it? Was it spontaneous or coordinated? Did Starmer know it was coming? And if not, why not? Each question chips away at the idea that he is firmly in charge. Even MPs who remained in the chamber are now under scrutiny. Staying seated can look like loyalty or isolation. In moments like this, every choice is judged harshly and neutrality becomes impossible. What makes this moment especially volatile is how it connects to existing doubts. This wasn't an isolated incident. It landed on top of weeks of tension, criticism, and leadership strain. That context magnifies everything. A single misstep becomes a symbol of deeper problems. And symbols are powerful. By the end of the session, one thing was clear to everyone watching. Parliament did not look like a place of calm authority. It looked like a pressure cooker. And at the centre of it stood a Prime Minister struggling to contain forces that no longer fear him. This is the real consequence of what happened today. Not just embarrassment, not just headlines, but the sense that control is slipping. And that once it starts to slip, it rarely stops on its own. The confrontation may be over for now, the walkout may have ended, but the impact is still spreading. And the hardest part for Starmer is this: moments like today don't fade, they define. As the noise from the chamber faded, a deeper and more dangerous phase began. Because political damage does not end when voices quiet down, it settles in. And what happened in Parliament has now started to reshape behaviour across the entire system. Inside Labour, the walkout has triggered a wave of private panic. MPs are asking questions they were not asking yesterday, not about Farage, not even about the attack itself, but about Keir Starmer's grip on leadership. When MPs walk out in public, it signals that private discipline has already failed. That is the real warning sign. Senior figures within the party are reportedly frustrated, not just embarrassed. They understand how rare and risky mass walkouts are. They are blunt instruments. Once used, they cannot be taken back, and they leave a simple impression with voters. The party could not handle the moment. Starmer's position has become even more complicated. Any attempt to reassert control risks reopening wounds. Any attempt to calm tensions risks appearing passive. Leadership after a public rupture is always harder than leadership before one, because authority has to be rebuilt under a spotlight. Farage, meanwhile, is benefiting from momentum. He has not needed to repeat his attack. He doesn't need to explain it. The images did that work for him. A leader standing firm, an opposing party visibly fracturing. That contrast is powerful, and Farage understands its value. Sometimes the most effective move after a strike is silence. Across the media, analysis has turned ruthless. Commentators are no longer debating the substance of what was said. They are debating what it revealed. The walkout is being framed as a loss of nerve, a failure to engage, or worse, an admission that Starmer could not defend himself effectively in the moment. Whether that interpretation is fair no longer matters. Politics is shaped by perception, not intention. Public reaction reflects this shift. For many viewers, especially those already sceptical of political leadership, today confirmed a belief that Parliament is disconnected, reactive and unstable. That reaction cuts deep because it doesn't favour any single party, but it punishes whoever appears weakest at the moment. And right now, that is Labour. Inside Starmer's team, emergency damage control is underway. Messaging is being tightened. Appearances are being planned carefully. Allies are being encouraged to show unity. But unity performed after a crisis always feels different. It looks managed, not natural. The walkout has also created friction among Labour MPs themselves. Some feel exposed. Others feel betrayed, and some believe the exit was necessary. Others believe it handed Farage exactly what he wanted. That disagreement matters because internal trust is the glue that holds leadership together under pressure. Once that trust weakens, coordination suffers. What makes this moment especially dangerous is that it feeds into a larger story already forming around Starmer, that he is struggling to control events rather than direct them. Today's confrontation did not create that story, but it strengthened it, and strengthened narratives are hard to break. Rivals inside and outside Parliament are watching closely, not celebrating loudly, not attacking recklessly, just watching. Because when a leader shows vulnerability, patience becomes a weapon. Pressure doesn't need to be constant, it just needs to be applied at the right time. The question now being asked quietly is simple and brutal. If Labour cannot maintain discipline during a parliamentary confrontation, how can it claim to govern effectively under national pressure? That question will not be answered in one speech or one appearance. It will be answered slowly through behaviour, reactions and consistency. And after today, every action Starmer takes will be interpreted through the lens of weakness or recovery. There is no neutral ground anymore. Moments like this redraw the political map. They don't decide outcomes immediately, but they change trajectories. And trajectory matters more than headlines. Farage has altered the direction of this debate. The walkout ensured that. Starmer now has to fight uphill, not just against opponents, but against the image that was broadcast live to the country. That is the lasting impact. The chamber may be quiet now. The MPs may have returned to their seats, but the damage has moved beyond the room. It is now embedded in the story. Britain is telling itself about leadership, control, and who can withstand pressure when it truly counts. As the fallout spreads, the situation has entered its most dangerous phase, the phase where reactions matter more than the original event. What happened in Parliament cannot be undone. The walkout cannot be erased. The confrontation cannot be reframed completely. All that remains now is how Keir Starmer responds and whether that response convinces anyone he is still in control. Inside Labour headquarters, the mood is tense and fractured. Senior figures are reportedly split on strategy. Some believe Starmer must confront the moment head-on, calling out the walkout as unacceptable and reasserting authority, clearly and publicly. Others warn that such a move could deepen divisions and turn quiet discontent into open rebellion. This lack of consensus at the top is itself a problem because uncertainty at leadership level filters down fast. Starmer is now trapped between firmness and fragility. If he disciplines MPs who walked out, he risks being portrayed as authoritarian and insecure. If he avoids discipline, he looks powerless. If he tries to move on too quickly, critics accuse him of denial. Every possible response carries risk, and that is the hallmark of a leader under siege. Meanwhile, the opposition is carefully shaping the narrative. They are not mocking the walkout openly. They are not attacking Starmer aggressively. Instead, they are presenting themselves as calm observers of a system that appears to be failing under Labour's watch. That contrast is deliberate. Chaos on one side, control on the other, even if exaggerated, is a powerful political weapon. Farage, once again, barely needs to speak. His role in this phase is symbolic. The fact that he triggered such a visible reaction is now the story. Supporters are framing the walkout as proof that he exposed something raw and uncomfortable. Critics are forced to explain why elected MPs chose to leave rather than engage. Either way, the spotlight remains fixed on Labour's response. Public confidence is beginning to harden into judgment. For many viewers, today was not about ideology, it was about composure. When pressure arrived, one side held its ground and the other appeared to fracture. That perception sticks, especially among voters who value strength and stability above policy detail. This is the deeper danger for Starmer. Leadership is not just about being right. It is about appearing capable when challenged. And the images from Parliament have made that appearance harder to maintain. Even sympathetic commentators are now questioning whether Starmer underestimated the emotional temperature of his own party. Within Labour, MPs are becoming more cautious, fewer spontaneous statements, more careful wording, more weighting. That caution may look sensible, but it also signals fear. Fear of saying the wrong thing. Fear of being on the wrong side of internal power shifts. And fear is corrosive to unity. The walkout has also emboldened critics who were previously silent, not necessarily to speak out, but to believe that resistance is possible. Once that belief spreads, leadership authority weakens further. Challenges don't always come as direct attacks. Often they come as hesitation, delay, and quiet refusal to fall in line. Starmer's challenge now is psychological, not procedural. He must convince MPs that standing with him is safer than standing apart. He must convince the public that today was an anomaly, not a symptom. And he must do it without appearing desperate or defensive. That balance is extremely difficult to strike, especially under relentless scrutiny. Time is not his ally here. Every day that passes without a decisive reset allows the narrative to harden. The longer the walkout remains the dominant image, the harder it becomes to replace it with something else. Politics moves quickly, but reputations recover slowly. And still, the questions linger. Who authorised the walkout? Why wasn't it prevented? What does it say about internal discipline? These questions will be asked again and again, not because people expect clear answers, but because the uncertainty itself feeds doubt. This is how moments turn into turning points. Not through one speech, not through one headline, but through accumulation. The confrontation in Parliament may be over, but its shadow is stretching across everything that follows. And for Keir Starmer, that shadow is growing heavier with every hour. Because once authority is questioned in public, reclaiming it is the hardest task in politics. And the country is now watching closely to see whether he can. As the day draws to a close, one thing is becoming painfully clear. This moment will not simply pass. It will linger, it will be replayed, and it will shape how Keir Starmer is viewed from this point forward. Political storms do not always destroy leaders instantly. Sometimes they weaken them slowly until the structure can no longer hold. What happened in Parliament has crossed that line. For Starmer, the most dangerous consequence is not Farage's words, nor even the walkout itself. It is the doubt now planted in the minds of MPs, voters and observers alike. A doubt about control, doubt about authority, doubt about whether he can hold firm when pressure arrives without warning. Even if Labour regroups, even if discipline is restored on paper, the memory remains. Politics is unforgiving in that way. Images burn deeper than explanations. And the image of Labour MPs storming out while their leader sat under attack will be remembered far longer than any statement issued afterward. This is where leadership either hardens or fractures. Starmer now faces a defining choice. He can attempt to carry on as if this was an isolated incident, a bad day, an overreaction, a moment of heat. Or he can treat it as a warning signal and reshape by how he leads, how he enforces unity, and how he confronts opponents who thrive on pressure. Neither path is easy. Carrying on risk denial, reshaping risk resistance. But doing nothing is the most dangerous option of all, because in politics, hesitation is often interpreted as weakness, and weakness invites challenge. Farage, for his part, has already achieved something few manage. He forced a reaction so strong it spilled into public disorder. He exposed emotional fault lines inside Labour that had been hidden for months, and he did it without losing composure. That combination is powerful, and it will not be forgotten by supporters or critics alike. The broader impact goes beyond party politics. For the public, moments like this deepen cynicism. They reinforce the idea that Parliament is divided, reactive and unstable. Trust erodes not because of ideology, but because of behaviour. When voters see leaders lose control of the room, they question whether those leaders can control the country. That is the real cost. Starmer's challenge now is not to win an argument, but to restore confidence. Confidence among MPs who must decide whether loyalty is still worth the risk. Confidence among voters who need to believe that leadership exists beyond slogans. And confidence among allies who want reassurance that Labour can govern under pressure. This will not be achieved quickly. Authority, once damaged in public, does not return through explanation. It returns through consistency, firmness and visible control over time. And time is something politics rarely offers generously. What comes next will matter more than what just happened. If Starmer tightens discipline and projects clarity, he may still contain the damage. If divisions continue to leak, today will be seen as the moment things began to unravel. History often chooses one moment to symbolise decline. Even when decline has been gradual, this may be that moment. The chamber has emptied, the shouting has stopped, the headlines have been written, but beneath the surface, movement continues. Calculations are being made. Positions are shifting. And the political ground is still unsettled. This is the aftermath phase, so the most deceptive phase of all, because it feels quieter, but it is not calmer. It feels slower, but it is not safer. And it is in this phase that leadership is either rebuilt or quietly replaced. For Keir Starmer, the storm in Parliament was not the end of the story. It was the signal that the fight for authority has entered a new and far more unforgiving stage. And from here on, every step will be watched.